Good morning, everyone. The last lecture was on Learned Society and Introduction from Unit 2. Now we are going to start another topic from Unit 2 itself. And the topic is customs and law. Customs means we're talking about social customs. And law means we're talking about a written and which is codified. And customs means we're talking about religious rituals or cultural rituals. So now we are going to understand the meaning of customs. A custom is defined as a cultural idea that describes a regular patterned behavior that is considered characteristics of life in a social system. So when we are talking about customs and when we are trying to understand custom in our society, so we are trying to understand the various cultural as well as religious practices. That becomes very important for the maintenance of social system. So law also governs our society, but at the same time we have certain rituals, certain practices that becomes also very important to run a society, to make society more healthy and progressive. For example, shaking hands or saying namaskar or anything or bowing, these are all customs or methods of greeting people. The method most commonly used in a given society helps distinguish one culture from another. So culture is the cumulative creation of man and the handiwork of man and the medium through which he can ends. So culture becomes very important. Culture is social constructive. It's a social construction. So when we're talking about culture, man makes different cultures and man shapes different culture according to their needs. So culture becomes very important. And if you look at India as a plural society, we have multicultural, multi-religious, multilingual society, and we have a region or the regional diversity also. So on the basis of this diversity, you can find we follow different cultural patterns. We follow different religions, and if you look at the ends of these religions, somewhere the ends are the same. So sometimes you're becoming emotional, and in a home how we are managing different activities, how we are talking to our parents, and how we are maintaining the relationships, and so there you can find social customs plays a very important role. But when we have to understand society as a whole, when we have to understand the concept of plural society, so there a secular or the secularism becomes very important. And uh, and there we need certain codified rules when it comes to public life. But in most of the personal life, if you look at your home, you follow many customary practices, but at the same time in your home also you can find there are certain laws are there when it comes to family, when it comes to kinship, when it comes to offsprings. So there are different rules and regulations that binds it, but at the same time customs also becomes important. So customs, social customs as well as laws, these are two sides of the same coin. These both are very important to each other, both helps each other. So there can be any customary practices that can be later that can be changed also. So for example, shaking hands or greeting peoples can be one customary practices. So a custom is a pattern of behavior that is followed by a member of particular culture. For example, shaking hands upon meeting someone. So when you are meeting your, for example, your teacher, and you're saying good morning, sir, or good morning, ma'am, that can be one practice, one custom and practice also. So that is also very important. So there is no rule or regulation. If you must say namaste or good morning to your teacher, so maybe the teacher will not punish you. But when it comes to law, when you violate a kind of, for example, traffic rules and regulation or anything, when you violate any law, then there are certain sanctions. That under these sanctions you will get certain punishments also. So if a law goes against an established social custom, the law may be difficult to uphold. So that is very important to understand. Customs foster social harmony and unity within a group. So customs becomes very important. If you look at all kinds of ritual like a Diwali, Holi, or any other, like any kind of your rituals, Bihu, or any rituals, no. So these customs becomes very important for social harmony. Sometimes these customs also gives us a kind of strength, and sometimes these customs also unites us. The loss of cultural norms such as customs can cause a grief reaction that leads to mourning. So this is also one of the most important thing that you have to keep in your mind. when it comes to social customs. So when it comes to the understanding of these customs also becomes very important to understand. So now we will move to the next slide, the origin of customs. So customs can persist for generations as new members of society learn about existing customs through a process of socialization. Generally, as a member of society, most people adhere to customs without any real understanding of why they exist or how they got started. Societal customs often begin out of habit. A man claps the hands or the hand of another upon first greeting him. The other man, perhaps still others who are observing, take note. When they meet someone on the street later, they extend a hand. After a while, the handshaking action becomes habitual and takes uh, on a life of its own. So, so if you look at, if you will understand, if you trace the origin of the customs, uh, just go back to the ancient India or go back to the different human civilization across the world. You can find that there were certain customary practices, and there were certain practices which were important in all phases of history, all phases of the civilizations across the world. So when it comes to different civilizations or different historical periods, so customs were there, and it was there, and it was transmitted from one generation to the other through socialization. So socialization as a concept becomes very important, and in socialization there were different learning process also. So there were informal kind of socialization where you're learning different customary practices, and for example, you belong to a particular culture, and you know many things you know about that particular culture. So that becomes very important. Now we're talking about global society, and of course we're talking about COVID-19 today. And COVID-19 is also one consequence of globalization. Uh, so when it comes to globalization, when it comes to COVID-19, now the interactions has become more faster. And in the same way, if you look at globalization, with reference to COVID-19, and COVID-19 also, it's also very faster as compared to the earlier diseases. So this is also one kind of like induction. In the same way, when it comes to customs, so customs also, like, it's a kind of like global exchange. So if you look at the diaspora communities, diaspora means the people who are living abroad from their original household, original home. So people are away from their home. Uh, for example, people living in America, UK, and so many other countries from India, and they are going there with certain customary practices, and they are sharing these customary practices or the customs with other societies, other communities out there. So sometimes they create their own diaspora out there, where they are sharing their own culture. For example, Punjabi diaspora in Canada is one good example, where they are promoting Punjabi culture worldwide, and these can be one good example. So customary or the customs becomes very important to regulate a social life. It becomes important. Customs also gives us direction, but of course there are certain customs or certain practices that were not considered as good. And for example, sati prata can be one custom, and later on due to Raja Ramohun Roy, or you can say that the William Bantic. Uh, so the practice of sati has been abolished in 1829, and later on there were many amendments in Rajasthan High Court, or Supreme Court of India. So Rajasthan 1987 to 1998. So remember these all kinds of like examples, as well as why how to trace the origin of customs, or the custom or the customary practices. So customs here, we mean we are talking about social customs. So we are talking about the customs that are visible in our society, that guides us, and that helps us to understand the meaning of a social life, the meaning of social relationships, the meaning of kinship, and etc. etc. So when it comes to maternal or paternal relationships, from your like you can say the paternal side or from the maternal side, these are relationships or somewhere based on customary practices also. So if you look at your family, you might be having certain cultural or religious rituals. So these all things becomes very important, and don't think that these customs are different from law. Somewhere a law helps, or law protects your customary practices also. When it comes to any kind of festival, somewhere law also becomes a part and parcel there. So now we should move to the next slide, and it's on social importance of customs. So this is also one important point. So our time customs becomes the law of social life, and because customs are so important to social harmony, breaking them can theoretically result in an of so a fever that has little or nothing to do with the custom itself. So particularly when the reasons uh, perceived for breaking it have no bearing. In fact, for example, after handshaking becomes a norm. So now means we're talking about one belief or one customary practice, or one rule and regulation. An individual who declines to offer his hand upon meeting another may be looked down upon and or pursued as being suspicious. Why won't he shake hands? What's wrong with him? So these are certain questions that becomes important now there to understand. So assuming that a handshake is a very important custom, consider what might happen if an entire segment of a population suddenly decide to stop shaking hands. And so it's for reasons such as there these that conservative forces often warn that breaking customs can result in the decline of society. While this may be true in some instances, more progressive voices argue that in order for certain to evolve, certain customs must be left behind. So there are different approaches to understand different customer practices. The so when it comes to the role of social custom. Custom is an important meaning of controlling social behavior. The importance of customs in society cannot be minimized. They are so powerful that no one can escape their range. They regulate social life, especially among illiterate people, to a great extent, and are essential to the life of a society. There is one scholar, uh, McDougall. He writes the first requisite of a society, the prime condition of social life of man was, in the words of Bagehot, a hard crust or cake of custom. In the struggle for existence, only those societies survive which were able to evolve such a hard crust of customs, binding men together, assimilating their actions to the accepted standard, compelling control of the purity or the purely egoistic impulses, and exterminating the individuals incapable of such control. Custom is avoided more spontaneously because it grows slowly. People follow similar behavior pattern. So custom is the repository of social heritage. So when it comes to social heritage, custom, in fact, it is the repository of our social heritage. It preserves culture and transmits it to the succeeding generation, bring people together and develop social relationships among them. Enemies are turned into friends by customs. It is needless to say that Hinduism is alive today because of customs. It would have died long ago had not the Hindus been forced to abide by customs. This is one good example to understand. In all the religion, you can understand that custom becomes very important to sustain a particular culture. And custom mold personality also. Custom plays a very important role in personality building. From birth to death, man is under the influence of customs. He is born out of marriage, a custom. He is brought up according to the customs, and when he dies, he is given last rites as laid down by customs. Customs mold his attitudes and ideas. Customs are universal. You can find custom across the world. There is no country or community wherein customs are not found. In some communities, they are regarded so sacred that their violation cannot be even thought of. The society wishes us to follow them. In primitive society, adherence to custom was the general rule, and so it is even today among the aboriginal tribes. So in tribal communities, you can find the custom. And we have many thinkers in sociology like Malinowski, and Malinowski in sociology is considered as a social anthropologist, and he has discussed about tribal communities in detail. And so there can be many custom plays a very important role in society. Customs becomes very important to strengthen a society. So customs and and law are two sides of the same coin. So now we'll try to understand customs across culture. So when we are trying to understand customs across culture, different culture of course have different customs, which means that something that may be an established tradition or society may not be in another. For example, in the United States, and cereal is considered a traditional breakfast food, but in other cultures, breakfast might include dishes such as soup or vegetables, or pranthas or lassi. While customs tend to be more entrenched in less industrial society, they exist in all types of societies, regardless of how industrialized they are or to what level of literacy the population has risen. Some customs are so strongly entrenched in a society that is uh, 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 both male and female, that they continue to flourish regardless of outside influences or attempt or at intervention. So customs you can find across the culture, and in India you can find this custom in all the societies, in all the cultures, maybe in North India, South India, West India, or you can find culture different in different places. So now when custom migrates, this is also very important to understand when customs uh, migrate. Uh, so while you can't pack them neatly in a suitcase. Customs are often of the most important thing people take with them when they leave their native cities. I already discussed with you diaspora communities, for whatever reason, to immigrate and settle elsewhere. Immigration has a huge impact on cultural diversity, and on the whole, many of the customs immigrants bring with them sought to enrich and broaden the customs or the cultures of their new homes. Customs that center on music, the arts, and traditions are often the first to be accepted and assimilated into a new culture. On the other hand, customs that focus on religious beliefs, the traditional rules of management, the language are perceived to be foreign or often met with resistance. So there are very important ways of understanding these culture, and you can find culture also migrate. Migrate means talking about migration from one place to another place, and these are also becomes very important to understand when you have to understand these different things. So what you have to remember in this lecture, number one, you have to remember about what is social customs. Social customs, we are talking about riti rivas. We are talking about our own, like societal various cultural or religious rituals that we follow, that we practice, but at the same time we are trying to understand, or we are trying to relate these customs with the law. And so that you have to keep in your mind. At the same time, you have to keep in mind the social change. When customs migrate means we talk about social change. We are talking about migration, immigration. We're talking about people who migrate from one place to another, and they go there they go there with different cultures also. So that is also very important to understand. And now we will discuss about another thing, and we will discuss about the difference between customs and law. So this is also one of the most important things that we have to discuss. We have to remember. Whenever we have to remember, we have to keep in mind that this also becomes very important to understand. So what are the different difference between customs and law? In order to get a deeper insight into the nature of custom law, we may here establish difference between two. Law is a make, custom is a growth. Law is explicitly and deliberately made by the definite power of the state, whereas customs is a group of procedures that has gradually emerged without express um, enactment, without any constituted authority to declare it, to apply it, and to safeguard it. Customs emerges spontaneously without any guide or directions. Law is consciously created and put into force at the moment of its enactment. For example, Indian Constitution. In other words, law is a make, custom is a growth. This is very important. Law is a make, custom is a growth. Law needs a second thing. Law needs a special agency or enforcement. Custom does not. Law is applied by special agencies and is sanctioned by organized coercive authority. Custom does not need any special agency for its application. It is enforced by spontaneous social action. No physical penalty. Uh, no physical penalty visits a violator of custom, whereas punishment is meted out to one who violates the law. The state will not punish a child if it does not touch the feet of his parents in the morning. Law is specific, customs or not. Law is specific, defined and clear. One can know what the law of the land are, but customs are not. Customs are very, you can say that it's very abstract. Law is more flexible and adaptable than customs. Law can readily adjust itself to changing conditions, where customs cannot be readily changed. Customs are literally fixed and permanent. In times of crisis, a law cannot be immediately enacted to meet the emergencies. A sudden change cannot be brought about in custom also. In India, when the central government employees had gone on strike, thus paralyzing the life of the community, the government of India at once met the situation by declaring strike illegal and enacting a statute banning strikes in essential services. The more dynamic the society, the less is reliance placed on traditional custom practice or the customary rules, and the more it is placed on newly enacted regulations. Uh, Customs fade and disappear without a formal abolition and without recognition by any authority. But laws disappear only when abolished by recognized authority. Just as formal enactment of law is necessary for it to come into effect, so its formal abolition is necessary to stop its binding influence. Law is more idealistic than customs. Law tend to be more idealistic than customs. It is the offspring of mind and directed to aims which are far above the actual practice of society. Custom is a product experience and merely concerned with the daily routine of life. Law reforms the customs and abolishes those which are out of tune with the changing conditions. For example, the Hindu code bill, the Sati Pratha, etc. etc. And many of the Hindu customs regarding marriage, divorce, and succession. The law generally deals with matters which are vital to the life of society, whereas the subject matter of customs is more ordinary and familiar. The customs we observe in addressing persons of authority or taking out our meals or celebrating a festival do not rise above the commonplace. But the laws uh, passed for creating a National Academy of Sangeet or Satya Academy of Sangeet or the Satya Academy, establishing a welfare state, abolishing the abolishing zamindari system, introducing 3 degree course. So various reforms that we have done under law, making the joining of NCC compulsory and nationalizing the banks deeply affect the social structure. So there can be many um, ways of understanding both customs and law. So what you have to keep in your mind, you have to understand, for example, when we are trying to understand social customs, so there the concept of society becomes very important. So you have to understand the Indian society here, you have to understand the plural society of India, and then come to law. Then law means we're talking about Indian constitution. So at present we have 448 articles in the Indian constitution that you have to understand, and then you have to relate social customs with law also. So both are interlinked to each other. Law also helps in our social customs. Custom also helps, also guides our laws. So the custom doesn't mean that these are superstitious or we are talking about illogical or irrational. Customs, some customs also are based on scientific, are based on rationality. So somewhere these customs also strengthen our society. It unites our society. It makes our society more healthier. And what you have to do in this lecture, please try to understand the meaning of social customs. At the same time, try to understand the concept of law, and then understand both, differentiate between customs and law. And at the same time, what you have to do, you have to understand both the concept in more detail, and that only will help you to understand more about customs and law. And now I will stop here. If there will be any query or any question, you can ask me through mail, or you can contact me also. And thank you so much.